Hello and welcome everybody and happy Friday. Welcome to Istio Weekly. Thanks everyone for joining. Today we'll be joined by Aditya Prerepa, who's an Istio maintainer, and we'll talk about how he started contributing to Istio and Envoy. So after the talk, feel free to ask questions at any time. On YouTube, and I'll bring it up to Aditya, and we can chat through those. Also, if you have any questions or comments later, just put them in the comments below the video, and we'll get to them. So before we go and chat with Aditya, let's go through a couple of highlights that happened in the past couple of weeks in the mesh world. Again, all the links will be in the description. So the first highlight is the announcement Tetrade made in regard with Amazon EKS and EKS Anywhere. Tetrade is a launch partner with Amazon for EKS Anywhere. The Tetrade's Istio subscription product offers standard and FIPS compliant builds of upstream Istio that are vetted for use by EKS and EKS Anywhere. Also, our flagship product, Tetrade Service Bridge, allows you to secure, connect, and observe your apps in a unified way using a single management plane across your EKS and ECS clusters as well as VMs on EC2. Like in the previous episode 2 weeks back, we spoke with Adam's Wiki about what is enterprise service mesh, why would you need one, how to use it, etc. Adam also did a demo of TSB, Tetrade Service Bridge there, so check that out. Also check out our offering on AWS Marketplace. All links will be in the description. Another news this week, we also released a new version of our popular Istio fundamentals course. This time, the full course text, labs, and videos are all available in Mandarin. Thanks to Jimmy Song for going through this and working on this. You can check it out over at academy.tetrade.io. As for the upcoming events, Tetrade is a platinum sponsor for EnvoyCon. EnvoyCon is coming up on October 11th. There'll be a full day of Envoy-related talks. We'll also have Aditya from Tetrade and John from Google talk about how to speed up Istio by implementing Envoy's Delta Discovery services. Also, Dan from Tetrade will talk about extending Envoy using WASM. I think you can still register for the in-person or virtual-only access to the conference, so make sure you do that if you're interested in this. As always, we do love to hear from you. Is there anything else that's happening in the service mesh world that we should know about? Any topics you would like us to cover? Leave your thoughts or comments here on YouTube, or just open an issue in our GitHub repo. So all links and info, everything will be in the description. Also, today is October 1st, which is the start of Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest, if you haven't heard about it before, it's a month-long celebration of open source that's run by DigitalOcean. So during this whole month, any contributions you make to GitHub or GitLab repos can be rewarded, so you can get like a cool looking t-shirt and stickers. But even more than that, you can learn about your favorite open source projects and actually learn about how to contribute to open source as well. And with that, today's guest, Aditya, will talk with Aditya about contributing to Istio and Envoy. Hey Aditya, how you doing? Okay.
Doing well.
Oh,
How are you?
perfect. You were muted for a second, I think.
Yeah,
uh, awesome. How's your Friday going so far?
it's pretty good. I got back from school around an hour ago, and yeah, it's a Friday, so that's good.
Yeah.
Homecoming is starting at my school, so that's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, one thing I forgot to bring up is we usually do Istio weeklies on Thursdays, but we're doing it on Friday and we're doing it on afternoon, and the reason for that is because Aditya has school. So, Aditya, can you introduce yourself just briefly? Who you are, what are you doing, what are you working on, stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a senior at Mission San Jose High School in Fremont. I work at Tetrate as a software engineer, primarily on open source. So I just do Istio contributions. And yeah, so I've really been into technology and programming and things like that, working on projects. And so this has basically been a culmination of all my experience, and working on Tetraid's been great. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. So when did you like you mentioned you started contributing like you contributor an Istio contributor, right? How did that start? Like when did you start like contributing?
Yeah. So really, like the way I got started contributing is like I was just plain bored. I basically quarantine had just hit, and our grades went pass fail at school, so that means I had no motivation to try at school. So I had a whole lot of free time on my hands, and probably needed to direct it to something good. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna go on GitHub Explorer and find things and see if I can find something. And I found Istio, and so that was like one of the first things that I actually couldn't understand. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's try to contribute to this. And so it was really like out of the blue, just like, hey, I need something to do. So I started doing this. I didn't imagine what it could possibly lead to, but yeah, that's how I started.
So wait, you actually like have you heard of Istio before? No, so it was just like
No.
it was literally you going on GitHub and like browsing it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
When was that? I mean, you said quarantine, so I'm assuming like last year or something.
Yeah. So like March of 2020.
Oh wow. Wow, that's like a little more than a year, right? A little more than a year
But
back.
yeah, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Did you have like I know Istio is like mostly Go, right? Did you have any like Go experience with the programming language or?
Well, I mostly use Go in like some personal projects, but I never like really use it as skill like I do at ISTE every day now. Yeah, I knew like the learning curve for learning the language, thankfully, wasn't as much because I knew some aspects of Go and like what it was all about, and I've actually learned to like it a lot. So
Oh, okay. So you did like you did know Go, right? And but not if I understand correctly, not in like a production sense, right?
yeah, not in a production sense. Mostly, it was like hacking together services for some backend I was making. It was never official.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, this is like I mean, going like a year from going like knowing nothing, nothing about Istio, pretty much about the pro. Did you know like about Kubernetes and stuff like that, or
No, nothing. I knew like about servers and like
yeah, yeah.
gRPC and things like that because I started like this entire journey just doing hackathons, and I was the back end guy for hackathons. I wrote a lot of backends in Java. So that was my background. But yeah, I never had experience with Kubernetes or anything. But I knew what like the basic gist of servers and networking was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is incredible, right? Doing like I'm thinking I've tried to like every time I go to like Istio repo or GitHub repo and like trying to like read the code and understand the code. There is a lot of it's not. I mean, it's not trivial, right? It's not your Hello World application that you can just clone and change the string somewhere and hey, right? It's you actually have to understand stuff. So how did you go about learning about Istio, I guess, right? How did you like? What was your? Did you just go through the documentation or go through
Yeah.
examples or?
So I guess when I tried going through documentation initially because that's kind of the intuitive thing to do, but that all this documentation, the concepts are so abstract that it was all lost on me.
Hmm.
Like reading about virtual services and destination rules, and like coming from a background of like just backend is like, what is this? What am I looking at? I had no context for like how Istio was used in production or like why people needed it and what Kubernetes was even at the time.
Hmm.
So really, the way I went about learning Istio was just by writing tests for the code base and like just learning learning really well how specific parts of the code base worked by testing those areas, like writing unit tests. And then as I like gained an understanding of how a certain code path worked, I could apply that to the macro and like zoom out and understand like where that fit in the bigger picture. So that's how I kind of got started, just like writing tests. And I think I firmly believe that is like the best way, especially if you're in too deep in something that you may not know anything about.
Hmm.
That's probably the best way to get started, just like writing tests for it.
So it's almost like you like focused on a small enough slice of like a huge project. I mean, Istio is huge with all the dependencies and just understanding everything, like you said, the resources and all that. So basically, go with unit tests, start small, like in a niche enough
Yes.
area, right? Figure it out, understand how that works. Uh,
Yeah. I basically like I tried like understanding it all, and it was not possible because Istio is so big. Like it's the scope of like the things it tries to tackle are is all over the place. So for me, like I just picked like eeny meeny miny more random code path, like and then like did that. I ended up with like starting in my early days with operator, like and I specifically worked on like the Helm part of operator or something like that. I wrote a test for that, and then I kind of understood, hey, what's the operator used for? And then so now I don't do anything even close to the operator. I haven't touched the operator in like maybe a year,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like that's where I started. Yeah.
So did you like? So you found the repo, you and then you just zoomed into like went through the code, found like how did you like? Let's say I want to start. Let's say I want to follow the same path that you did, right? I want to write some unit tests. Was it like I'm practically speaking? Did you actually go and log an issue and say? Like I want to write more unit tests here. Here's an issue. I'll fork the repo. I'll work on it. Or was it more of a let me look through all these thousands and thousands of open issues already, right? Which a lot of big projects on GitHub have, right? It's not a ding on Istio, right? But did you go that way, or was it more of a let me look through a code and I found like there's some things here that I can write about, and then you went that way?
Yeah, so I think Istio has around 700 open issues. Yeah, so it was like, and at the time I was working on, it, I think it was around 1,000. They actually brought it down, so that's good. Um, but like, it was kind of a combination of both because I looked at open issues and like, there's like this label as like community help wanted or good first issue,
Hmm.
and that's really helpful. I think if you're doing an open source project and you want new people to come and contribute, you should definitely have those labels on your issues that are trivial enough for people to solve, so they can like, because if you throw someone into an issue that's really hard to solve, like something maybe that has to do with like race conditions in the server or something, like, and they're very new, they're going to be thrown into deep and they're going to be like demotivated from working on it.
Yeah.
So some of the labels on some of the issues, like, oh, okay, there's a bug here, and it was as simple as, oh, a greater than it should be a greater than or equal to. In the end, it's like diving down into it. So yeah, some of the issues, like just looking through the issues, I did some of that. But then also, like as I was looking through the issues, I found code that, hey, maybe this could be like, there's no unit test for this, and I just took it upon myself, like, and just to like write unit tests for it. Like no matter what it was, like I should be able to like understand, like based on the input, like what output should it get, and it could be something as small as like a helper function or a driver function that basically drives the program, and just like going through that, going through the code path yourself, and like the hard work of just like reading it and understanding it, like just looking at it for a long time. That I think pays off in the end. That's what I found at least.
Mm, yeah. It sounds like I'm trying to think about some analogies here. When you were talking about it, I was thinking, do you know the game Civilization?
No, I'm too young
No.
for that thing.
Oh, okay. So it's like it's a strategy game where you're like exploring the world, right? And you start in a single tile, and everything is dark around you. And then as you walk, the more stuff like shows up, and you see more. It almost feels like starting with a small enough item, find an issue, and then expanding out from there, understanding more, getting a better overview of everything. So you started with the operator, and then what did you move like from there? Where did you go from there? What was the next, if you remember?
Yeah, I guess I started at the operator, and I think from then I think I just I ended up. So what I work on now is pilot, so I know the start and know the end. But I think
Mm,
in the midst I covered a lot of things. I think I covered like the agent. I covered like I think I covered Galley at one point in time, or maybe. But yeah, I think I mostly worked on either like STOD or the agent after operator.
oh, okay, okay. And also, like I've mentioned, Envoy Talk is coming up. EnvoyCon is coming up, and you're gonna do a talk there on speeding up. Was it speeding up STO? How did you guys use like Delta XDS to speed it up? Can you talk about like what is the talk gonna be about, or
Sure, yeah, I'll talk about the talk.
talk about the
Basically,
talk? Just don't talk
yeah,
about it too much. Don't give it all
yeah,
away. You know.
yeah. Basically, the talk will be about how we sped up Istio like, dramatically, actually, by using Delta XDS. Delta XDS is an API that Envoy offers. So basically, Envoy offers two APIs to propagate configuration to itself. So one is through the state of the world XDS, in which all the resources that Envoy needs are pushed every single time a change is made to any of them. So this is kind of inefficient because if you have like a million clusters and like just one of them changes, you have to push a million clusters. So, and but intuitively, you should only be pushing one, which is what Delta XDS does. Delta XDS will find the delta in what changed, translate it to Envoy resources, and send it over to the envoys that care. So yeah, that's basically Delta XDS does, and we've been implementing it since like February or March. And I think it's in a place now where it can be talked about. So yeah, so that's basically what the talk is about, and we'll be sharing like our journey implementing it, as well as some of the performance feedback we got. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it already like an upstream Istio or?
Yes, it is. It's not enabled by default because like it's kind of unstable.
Oh, okay, okay.
But it is in upstream Istio. Yes.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is also something that, well, not necessarily related to Delta XDS, but this whole like config sprawl where you said like if you have like millions of, and when you said millions of clusters, you were thinking Envoy clusters probably, not
Yes.
Kubernetes
Yes. Envoy
clusters.
clusters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of data that can get sent around to all the envoys, assuming you have like 1,000 services, right? There's a lot of stuff. There's also a way to prevent that, which doesn't like it's not a solution, right? But using the sidecar resource, right? That's what you can control with that as well, where you basically say, I don't care about like 700 of these services, right? Just send me the information about 300 or whatever, 300
Yes.
of those services. But yours is actually, well, we can actually just send the delta every time if we want to, right? Making it even more efficient, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, covering like Envoy, going from not knowing about Istio to actually like contributing and then doing a talk at a conference. That's really awesome. I mean, hat off.
Thank you.
uh,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So a couple of questions. Like, if I don't know if anyone on YouTube wants to chime in, ask a couple of questions. I do have like a couple of questions that I got beforehand. I think we covered like how do you decide what you're going to contribute, right? You basically look through the issues and then you start small and then expand out, right?
Yes. I should say like if you find something and you start contributing into it and like it's not for you, then like you should like find another area maybe because for me like I started in the operator and I know now that the operator isn't for me. But just because like if something doesn't like work out for you or it's not appealing to you even after you know what it is, then you won't do your best work. So you should like find a part because there will be a part of the code base which will be interesting to you or a component which is like interesting to you that serves an integral role. For me, it was Pilot, but like you should just find whatever you're interested in if you're interested in contributing, and just like dive into that, like learn it like head to toe, and just like understand it, and then you can actually be useful and like contribute features like quickly. And I think that's what's really useful. So yeah, I would just say like don't if you don't get discouraged and don't get stuck on any one thing if you don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. And also, like, I know some people, it can be daunting for people who, sure, yeah, you know Go, but maybe you've never written like a production code or something. I mean, one thing that I want to bring up, like, non-code contributions are also a great way to start, right? Not
Absolutely.
right? There's always, I think there's always like help needed with making documentation better, fixing like typos, explaining something better than it is explained, adding more like tutorials, examples, or as you said, then start
Yes.
with tests, right? I think it depends on the person, right? If you're not comfortable with code necessarily, right, you can still go and contribute,
Yes.
or if you don't have
Abs-
time,
Yeah, absolutely. I think code is only half the battle. There's a lot more that goes into an open source project. And I think that's the spirit of open source is that like you can contribute not just to code, but like documentation, like like you said, explaining things better, like hosting meetings, like things like that. Like all of these things, not only the code make up open source, like make open source so powerful and what it is. So yeah, if you're interested in contributing documentation and code isn't for you, like by all means, like that is just as important. So yeah, I agree.
yeah, yeah. And like I guess I'm looking at the questions that we got, right? Like what artifacts are required to be delivered for the contribution? I think that one depends on what are you like depends on an issue, right? The stuff that you're working
Yes.
on, right? And then the other one is this one is an interesting one, right? How do you determine the delivery date for,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do you, like, I know there's priorities, right? But how do you determine, like,
Yeah.
when is something going to be
So
completed, or is it dictated by someone, or how does that work?
so the thing about open source is that like especially if so I think it's a little it's different from companies than what is for open source, and that's one of the things I like about open source. Essentially, like if you start contributing to open source, you're not mandated to do anything, and like along with that, you're not mandated to deliver any deadlines either. So it's all will based. So there's no like specific deadline. At least like when I was contributing, like I could just contribute whenever I wanted. Like if I had a test the next week or something, I just wouldn't contribute, and there was no issue. Like there was like it's very flexible, especially if you're freelancing or like not freelancing, doing it yourself just out of interest. Now that I work at a company, like there are like certain areas which maybe like are in, are interesting to the company, and that so transversely are interesting to me. But when you're just starting to contribute by yourself, there's no deadlines.
Hmm.
They're like for Istio, there's like working group leads, which will for me it's a networking working group and will like just determine like the deadline. Um, or not the deadline like in this release like what we're interested in putting like what we're interested in driving forward, but if anybody else has things to drive forward that they're interested in doing, like nobody will stop them, or nobody will say hey you need to get it done by this place this time, because nobody really has the authority to do that in open source, which I think is one of the beautiful things about it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
that's there's no yeah.
yeah. Is there like I'm curious? Is there I don't know if this is an issue or not, but like let's say you wanna let's say you find an issue that you want to work on, right? It's like, oh, this is perfect for me. Do you like what is the proper etiquette? Do you just go and comment on the issue and say, hey, I'm gonna like claiming this issue for me, I'll take over and I'll work on it? Do you do it that way, or how do you like what is the etiquette, I guess?
So if you're involved in the community, you'll know like what team members are generally interested in doing what. So usually like there's no like if there's an issue that I'm interested in, I'll just take it. I'll self-assign, work on it, open up a PR, and link it to it, and then close it. That's it. Simple as that.
Mm.
But usually like if there's a conflict, which I think is rarer than you'd think, but if there's a conflict, then you would like talk to the person, and say, hey, are you still working on this, and do you need help with it, or can I help you with it? And really, it's not anything that etiquette is kind of used in the way where it's like it's only to be like nice. It's never like a I don't know how to put this. It's always helpful, but like it's not really required if in the context of open source.
Mm.
Like the etiquette at least of like assigning initiative to yourself, like unless you know someone else is working on it, and then you can say, hey, can I help with this? Like then you have to ask them, or you don't have to ask them. You can be like kind of I guess rude and put up a PR like next to theirs that does the same thing,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that
yeah.
is that's counterproductive though. Like I think you'll burn bridges that way. Like so, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that myself. So if there's an issue I'm working on, or if there's an issue someone else is working on, I'm interested in contributing to it. Like I'll usually talk to them, and they'll be more than happy to have me on, and like just like we'll work on it together. It's like two guys are better than one. So yeah, there's no issue with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. I was more thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna pick this one up. It's very easy. I'm gonna go and do it. It's in the PR. But then in the meantime, there's like three other people did the same thing. Or, but
Yes, that's why platforms like GitHub are very important. Like to coordinate what you're working on. Like
yeah,
you have to assign it to yourself or say, hey, at least say, I'm working on this. So if someone else was interested, they can either ask you, hey, can I help, or well, we'll work on it. So that's like the most efficient way.
yeah. But do you just go and assign it to yourself, or do you actually? Is there any like I don't want to use the word authority, right? But someone that you could CC and say, hey, by the way, may I take this issue and work on it, or is it just, hey, I'm gonna work on it? Uh, uh,
No, it's the wild wild west. There's no authority, which is something I love about it. It's like this project is owned by no one. It's or open source is owned by no one, which is great because you can do as it's like it's completely merit based. It's whatever the best like PR is, whatever the best contributions are, they win out. What gets merged to upstream. So in reality, like there's no authority saying, "Hey, you have to work on this," or "Hey, you can't work on this." The maintainers might say, "Hey, we're not going to merge this," but that's different as opposed to saying,
mm,
"Hey, we're not going to work. You can't work on this." or you don't have to ask. You can just go ahead and do it. And usually, more often than not, your contributions are like really appreciated, even if they're out of the blue. Those are like sometimes the better ones because they solve a problem that you thought you'd have to solve. So yeah, there's no like, you know, yeah, right.
Yeah, but there are. You mentioned like the working groups, right? The working groups are like a group of people working on those specific areas that actually decide, or not going to say decide, but think about what needs to be done, like any new features. Like let's say for whatever reason we want to add this new feature or this new command to Istio CLI, right? I'm assuming that needs to be like you can open either a PR probably and then propose it, I guess. Or is there any other? You're not gonna go and just implement it, right? And merge it and cross your fingers and hoping it's gonna get merged, right? It actually needs to. Like what I'm trying to ask is there has to be like an overarching strategy, right?
Yeah,
Or some
yeah. So
body of people or whatever that decide to steer the
yeah,
ship, I guess, to use the
yes,
analogy.
yeah, absolutely. That's also true. So while it is the Wild West still, and you can do whatever you want, usually your contributions won't get accepted if they're like not in the right direction that the project's looking for. So if you like want to get guidance on that, like Istio at least has like I think a lot of open source projects do. They have weekly like working group like meetings. So like networking has one, environments has one. Like there's a bunch of areas in the project that are split up, and they meet every week, and all of the interested parties come, and they like you can bring up you could anybody can put on the agenda, hey, I want to discuss this, and we'll
Mm.
discuss it, and we'll like deliver like a verdict. Like you can still work on it for your own, but like if it's presented to us and like we don't approve as the maintainers, like we may not merge it. So yeah, that's the difference. So yeah, it is up to you if you want to work on it, but it's probably wise to get approval.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to. Yeah,
Yeah,
Eh, eh,
like no one's
yeah. Go
no
ahead.
one's going to stop you from working on it.
Of
Is what
course,
I'm just trying to
yeah.
say.
That's
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to say. Like if you want to like for your own like learning or whatever reasons, if you want to try and implement this on your own without being like without feeling like working out there and showing your work to everyone, right? Just do it for your own sake. You can always do that. No one's, of course, no one's preventing you. But the right way would be if I want to add this new flag or whatever to STOCTL or something, to actually join the meeting, bring it up, discuss it with that working group, right? Get some, I guess, not necessarily approval, but get buy-off from people, right, or buy-in from people uh,
yes,
about the feature, and then and go and do it. How like for me, I've done like I don't think I've done any code contributions to either Istio or Envoy, but for me, the thing that was I don't know why you can like you can dispel that myth for me, but for me, the biggest pain point is just setting up the environment, like setting up the whole. Oh, do you want to run like do you want to build Istio on your laptop or whatever? Oh, how is the like how is the documentation for that, and how is like is there good guidance on it, or is it a lot of
yeah,
like do it on your own?
yeah. There's good guidance, I would say. Like at least in my early years of the project, they're like it's improved a lot. But like I think initially, like if you want to like develop locally, there is like guidance on the ST website. There like there's a contributing.md or and there's like a getting started. But like as you get more niche and want to test things and run things locally, like you might have to do things on your own. But like just to run Istio locally and like run the tests or something like that's pretty straightforward setup. Just install a Kubernetes cluster and then install Istio and then like have it connect. But I think usually like if you can do this all inside a Docker container as well. So like it's very isolated and straightforward.
Hmm.
At least in my experience with with the broad stuff. But as you get more specific, like if I want to test pilot, like sending X requests per second or something,
Yeah.
I want to then like you have to set things up on your own because like this predetermined functionality won't do anything for you. So yeah,
Hmm. All right. So yeah, I know Envoy was I did some documentation changes, and it's you go to Envoy, you make a change like no, there's a different repo for it. Go make a change there, and then we'll merge it, and it's I guess it's understanding how the whole flow works and everything. Um, have you, since it is Hacktoberfest, have you done like Hacktoberfest in the previous years or?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I have never like participated. I guess. It's funny because I could have like, I think it's three contributions that you need the shirt. To get the shirt.
I think it's five. I think
Oh,
it's
okay.
five. Yeah, I think you have to do like five contributions, and they have to be like tagged with like Hacktoberfest. There are some rules, right? But
Yeah, it seems like for people like me who like work on open source as a job, like it seems like a no-brainer to do Hacktoberfest because you get a free T-shirt and free just doing your job. But yeah, no, I haven't done it. I think maybe I'll do it this year. Yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Any? Do you have anything else that you want to share with the world? I guess.
Well, not really, except for like don't get discouraged. Like, and another thing I want to talk about is like reviewing, like receiving like reviews on code. Like if you don't like or like reviewing code in general, like I think one thing that kind of was like a rude awakening for me was like when I got my code reviewed and like it was like not correct, people would like say, "Oh, this is wrong. Change this." Da, da, da. And although like their intentions may not have been bad, like I think there's a wall between me and them, which is the computer. So like you can never like there's no like face to face, right? Like they might be
Mm.
explaining something helpfully, otherwise it's like or am I people later than you don't know. But I would say like, always like like if you receive reviews that are like that seem scathing maybe like don't take it in the wrong way like always assume that it's like coming from like a mentor of yours who
Mm.
just wants you to improve because if you take it in a way that's like not good or like if you take it in a way that I guess is malicious then like it's just counterproductive for everybody so if you get a review like don't jump to conclusions and just like try to see from their point of view and from the
Mm.
point of like your mentor. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's what I would say.
yeah. That makes sense. It almost sounds like anything that you do, like right, not necessarily just contributions, but in general, if you get feedback, take it as like feedback, not as a not as something like oh you're bad and you didn't do good. Not in that sense, right? Take it as a learning opportunity, right? And
Yeah, precisely. I think another thing is also like when you're the one reviewing. So since I became a maintainer, like I had to review things as well, and that is kind of like you're seeing both sides of the coin as someone who's received like reviews that were not so like were kind of scathing in the past like now I have to give those reviews to people like and sometimes it's not easy but I think as a maintainer it's like our duty to like just like review this code and like make Istio the best it is or make any code base the best it is for that matter so yeah, I think it's like there's this wall between which there's this disconnect but just like there's like no, you should like always understand that there is a disconnect when you receive reviews or make reviews before you like jump to any judgment.
yeah.
Yeah, that's my bit. Yeah.
Mm. That makes sense. I think also one thing is like just be nice, right, and be human.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
guess that's the if you
Yeah.
boil it
Absolutely.
down, right? It's like just be nice. That person on the other side is not like it's not attacking you personally or whatever, right? It's just feedback that helps you learn, right? And I guess it goes both ways. Like be nice when you're a maintainer and be nice when you're a contributor.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. Also, you mentioned maintainer. What does that mean? Is that like are you do you have like special permissions in the repo, or how does
Yeah.
how can I become a maintainer of Istio? Let me be direct.
Yeah. So I'll answer both questions. So the maintainer
Yeah.
basically so there's like a member which is just like a contributor, and the maintainer basically has merge access on the code base. So if you approve something, it can get merged if you're a maintainer in that code path. So for me, I'm a maintainer in the networking working group, which means I have maintenance permissions, I guess, on networking stuff. Um, and so the second question, like, how do you become an issue manager? Well, it took me a year, but I would say that like that was if you like commit to it a lot more than I. Well, it's not to say I didn't commit, but like I just had like a lot of things going for me. Like I go to school and stuff, and I did internships over the summer, and so like Istio was always something I did on the side. So it maybe took me longer than some people might have had to get maintainership, but I think just if you keep chipping away at something and get your like if you work on high impact issues that like actually garner user attention and then you actually like, address that and then you like keep improving the feature and like take a lot of these issues and like be noticed by other maintainers then like somebody will nominate you and you'll become a maintainer eventually.
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of like how you would become a maintainer.
So it's not like Hacktoberfest where you do like 5 pull requests.
Oh no, I think with Istio there's some bar. It's like I think 30 or 50 substantial PRs to your like
okay.
to that specific place, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that's like that's the bare minimum, and then you have to like gain you have to like request approval, and then you have to get approval at one of the meetings, and
Yeah,
it's like
makes sense. I mean, they don't want to. You don't want anyone having merge permissions to like to code base, right? For, but yeah, it's there's no hard number in a way, right? It's like you making meaningful contributions,
yes.
helping, right, being involved, and that from there it goes to that. All right. Well, thank you, Aditya, for the chat. I guess people can find you on Twitter, right? We have your Twitter handle there. Thanks for chatting. Um, and yeah, I hope everyone found this useful. You can find the Istio weekly schedule and any past episode that we did on istioweekly.com or our GitHub repo. Also, one note: we'll be taking a short break for the next couple of weeks, but we will be back with new episodes in November. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in November.